And welcome back to the Macabre Academy Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. So we were a page and a half in when Stephanie happened to blow a breaker, and not in the fun way. So we are going to start this whole shebang-a-bang over.
The broom closet apparently overpowered the fuse, so that was fun.
And just put a penny in there, you'll be fine.
It's fixed. I
don't
fixed
actually do that. That's a bad thing.
Thank God we weren't like all the way in, or that would have been bad.
That would have not been pleasant.
Yeah, we were at just the tip.
Just to see if you like it. Just to see if you like it. Why is my battery on hold? What the fuck? I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know, but here we are. We're starting again.
Yes, we are. We're back at it for a second time. All that great banter just gone.
Just gone. Just so gone. The sheer shock and surprise that you have never seen Silence of the Lambs is still
we haven't gotten there yet.
I know. I'm right there right now.
Spoiler alert.
All right, Kev, take it away.
All right. So how did we start the last one? Oh, right. Mr. Rogers' wife has died today.
Which is still incredibly morbid.
Yes. Would you say it's eating at you?
Not as much as this case, but yes.
Also, new statistics out today show that Pennsylvania was number 1 in sending people to D.C. to participate in the riot. So we're number 1. We're number 1.
I saw that. A local couple was getting investigated for that on my Facebook feed because I don't watch the news because I hate the news. I'm ashamed. Pennsylvania, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Gotta love Pennsylvania.
Pretty much.
So,
pretty
what
much.
are we talking about today for the second time?
Okay, so I have to backtrack a little bit. Last week, we talked about the Mandela effect.
Go back and listen to it. Even if you already have, go back and listen to it. We need the numbers.
Fair. In that case, I found that the very famous line, "Hello, Clarice," from Silence of the Lambs was never spoketh. It does not exist. It is a interdimensional matrix blip or something that some of us remember it, but it doesn't actually exist in this current timeline. And I wish that was this scenario for the case that we're discussing today. But what little you know about Silence of the Lambs, why don't you fire it away?
Well, it premiered on February 14th, 1991.
Oh, that's Valentine's Day.
Yes. I was wondering how long it was going to take you to get that.
I literally didn't know. I just wrote the notes. I didn't even think about it. Wow. That would be a date, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So it was a psychological horror film, and its release shocked the country. It was adapted from a Thomas Harris novel written in 1988. The plot is roughly that a young FBI cadet, Clarice Starling, must receive the help of an incarcerated and manipulative cannibal killer. Now, did he kill cannibals or was he cannibal? It's a little hard to tell from your notes. Because it sounds like he killed cannibals, but I'm pretty sure it was the other way around. Because I have seen one of the later movies, and it wasn't that.
He is notorious for ingesting his victims, especially with fava beans.
And a nice candy. Because I have seen Hannibal a couple of times.
Okay, good.
But your notes make it sound like he killed cannibals. So
you were supposed to read through the notes and correct them if it sounded wrong.
I read through them twice and I just caught it.
Okay, fair. This is the most interaction you've had with Notes pre-podcast, and I'm proud of you.
That's not true. I did write the Nirvana episode.
True.
And the RGB episode.
That one was really good. Go back and listen to that one.
So Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who did not kill cannibals, but in fact ate people, was helping our young cadet to catch another serial killer, a madman named Buffalo Bill, who skins his victims.
Mm-hmm. Buffalo Bill is what made this movie even more shocking. It wasn't necessarily the cannibal part where Dr. Lecter was discussing ingesting his victims. It was a lot of harsh visuals portrayed by Buffalo Bill in the movie. Buffalo Bill basically was kidnapping plump women and dumping them in a well. And one of the most famous scenes is him tucking his junk in, wearing this Shaw thing, dancing around and putting on lipstick, and he's listening to this like weird music, and those dogs running around and yapping. And behind him in his basement, there is a pit with the plump girl at the bottom screaming for help. And throughout the movie, he lowers a basket and asks the girl to put the lotion on its skin. And he's intentionally using it to dehumanize her.
Yeah, I'm not here to kink shame.
Yeah, really. But we're going to kink shame this because it's murder.
That's not a kink.
Well, then what's the kink?
I guess it could be. The dehumanizing thing.
Oh, yeah. That's why people wear the rubber suits with the rubber masks.
Yeah, I'm not here to kink shame. Like,
right.
If you want to get into that, get down with your bad self.
100% appropriate when it's consensual, but he is not following consent rules here.
Anyway, continue. I got us off track.
It is okay.
It's already late.
So his intention was to skin the girls to make himself a woman suit. So he's already... And the film's 1991.
We love her again. Yeah. There you go. Now you're back.
Uh-huh. Okay, so this movie was criticized heavily by the members of the LGBTQ or whatever it is now community. Okay. I liked when it was shorter, but I get it. We want to be very inclusive to those people, and I respect you. I just can't remember all the goddamn letters. Okay. Anyway, they claimed that Buffalo Bill was portrayed as a bisexual and a transgender, even though the character's sexual orientation is not stated. And Lecter himself, describing Bill, says he's not really transsexual. He wasn't gay. He was a man tormented who hated himself. And the only reason he wished to be a woman in this woman's skin suit was to remove himself as far away from himself as he possibly could. The criticism got so wildly out of control at one point that they just started claiming that Jodie Foster, who played Cadet Clarice Sterling, was a lesbian portrayal, and it was just crazy. Like, welcome to the 90s, okay? The real reason we're looking at this movie is because of American murderer Gary Michael Heidnik. He was one of 6 real-life murderers that Thomas Harris based the Buffalo Bill character on.
Okay.
And I guess in the 80s, Tom had gained access to the FBI's new behavioral science unit in Virginia.
We love them.
Hmm?
We love them.
Yes.
Maybe,
They were
I don't know.
We do. They were pioneering criminal profiling of serial killers and murders, which we saw in the Alaskan Butcher Baker. So you can take very little evidence and look at a crime scene and extrapolate what kind of person would commit said thing. So it makes it easier to find the perpetrator. What upset me about this case wasn't, well, the case is pretty graphic, like blanket warning right now. But I found it on Murder, Mystery, and Makeup with Bailey Sarian. She is huge in the true crime community, especially among women, for putting on makeup and telling these stories. And I did not realize how misorganized the story was when she told it on the YouTube video. It was very disappointing to me. It's like she cut and pasted the timeline into different sections to create a more dramatic story. But if you tell the story sequentially, it is still very dramatic. So I, of course, had to go back and research the whole thing. And, several books and documentaries and video clips and shit later, I have come up with a 2-part episode correction to her 34-minute video.
We don't do things over the top here at all.
I absolutely love when we get Patreon requests, especially for me to go back and add more information to something that somebody's interested in, to go back and research. It's a huge honor to be asked to do that. It's like the attention to detail that I put in matters. So I really appreciate you guys supporting my ability to research. So, Kev, why don't you give me some background information on Heidnik?
Well, because I'm currently texting somebody about trying to make some money this weekend, so give me a second. Okay. So he was born November 22nd, 1943. His parents, Michael and Ellen Heidnik, they split up in 1946, which must have been scandalous back in the day, I would think, but what do I know?
Extremely.
He was 3 at the time of the divorce. His mother raised both himself and his younger brother Terry for 4 years until they were placed with the father and a new stepmother for 7 years. Now, Gary has claimed that his father was emotionally abusive toward him due to the fact he was a prolonged bedwetter. All his dad knew how to do was ridicule, humiliate, and beat the boys under the guise of discipline. He would become very annoyed and angry when Gary would wet the bed and would hang the soiled sheets in the windows on full display for the neighbors to see, which is a thing, I guess. I don't know. He also painted targets on the butts of their pants and sent them to school that way.
Yeah, could you fathom going to school with a target on your ass?
I mean, if you're not a Patreon and watching the video part of this podcast, you really should, because my face is kind of annoying. As one may expect, Gary avoided his peers at school like the plague, to the point where he wouldn't look anyone in the eye.
I think what's interesting is that he is receiving humiliation at home and he's avoiding people at school. But I found a snippet where somebody was actually trying to be nice to Gary and he reacted very strangely. One of his female peers decided to discuss an assignment that needed completed for class with him. And just the sheer fact that she addressed him caused him to become enraged. And he screamed in her face that she was not worthy enough to speak with him. Just completely inappropriate. Altogether. And other people were not very nice to him. He also was receiving unrelenting teasing because he had a oddly shaped head due to the fact that he had fallen out of a tree when he was younger. And
Always fun.
Always fun. So he has this strange behavior, but apparently he was a very good student. So I'm noticing in these true crime cases, we're getting IQs. So he has a relatively high IQ of 148. I don't understand how this makes him smart. Like,
well,
I know that sounds fucked up, but I don't understand IQs. Okay, I'm a good student. I got a high IQ, but I'm fucked in the head. Like,
the first IQ test wasn't actually invented to measure IQ.
oh,
In 1905, French psychologist developed the Binet-Simpson test to identify children who would need individualized help outside of school. Yet as time went on, psychologists refined the test and developed many more tests and started to attribute performance to someone's general intelligence. But are IQ tests valid, unbiased measures of general intelligence? They didn't start out that way, of course. It was being used to discriminate against racial and ethnic groups, because of course it was. And this ultimately led to the forced sterilization of thousands of people during the eugenics movement.
Oh, no.
Because of course it was. Why wouldn't it?
So why are we still using these tests?
There's actually people who study the validity of these tests,
okay,
using rigorous statistical techniques. One person says that IQ tests do have a meaning and are valid measures of intelligence when they're interpreted correctly. In the field of psychology, we do not, like we have in medicine, safeguards in place like the FDA. There's an ethical code, but that hasn't stopped 100 years of inappropriate practices that their field needs to resolve. One of the ways these tests are frequently misinterpreted, according to this person, Dombrowski. Well, that's a good name. I trust a guy with a name Dombrowski, don't you? Like, if you tell me your last name is Dombrowski, I'm going to believe whatever you fucking tell me.
You're not wrong.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I'm Dr. Dombrowski. Okay, whatever you say, Doc. I am 100% in on you.
Maybe that's something to add to your business card somehow.
Yes. I'm endorsed by Dombrowski.
Ancient alien astronaut theorist endorsed
Dombrowski.
Okay.
So, like I was saying, one of the ways these tests are frequently misinterpreted, according to Dombrowski, is when any score from the test besides overall IQ is used. IQ measures the variety of skills like working memory, fluid reasoning, verbal comprehension, and more. So that's kind of where we are there.
Okay, so he has these things.
Yes, and it can also change based on context.
Okay. All right, so he has reasoning and certain mental acuity skills.
Apparently.
That would be above average compared to other people.
Sure,
in certain areas.
Yes.
Fantastic. So, Gary's father talked him into enrolling into Staunton Military Academy, so military school, for 2 years.
Down in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Completely
Used to live
failed.
near there.
Hmm?
Used to live near there. It's right over the mountain.
What's interesting is the military academy is now defunct. Like, it is dissipated. It no longer exists. It was pretty fucking old, but the Vietnam War just crushed it in the 60s and 70s. It just went downhill from there, unfortunately. But Gary himself failed to graduate from the school while it was still operational. So he leaves military school, goes back to public school, drops out again. So this is an awesome idea. Let's go join the Army. So at 17, he joins the Army, enlists, and he lasts only about 13 months. What's interesting here is that his drill sergeant said, hey, he's pretty good. All right, he excelled in basic training. But when he went to apply for several specialist positions, ultimately he was rejected. It didn't give a reason why, but disappointment there. So Gary goes to Texas and he trains as a medic, and he's pretty darn good at that. So he's transferred to the 46th Army Surgical Hospital in Landstuhl, West Germany. And while he's in Germany, he earns his GED. Now, he's active at the time, and he's complaining of dizziness, nausea, blurred vision, and headaches. Okay, so he was diagnosed with gastrotinitis. Sure, we're going to go with that. Do you know what that is?
Well, I'm looking at the notes, so I do. However, our audience may not.
Right. Do you want to tell me or you want me to tell them?
It appears to be infectious diarrhea.
Yes. I had to look that one up. I was like, oh my God, why don't they just call it that?
Because then they can't charge a bunch of money.
Fair. What's interesting is this diagnosis, right? The doctor that diagnosed said infectious diarrhea noted at that time Gary displayed signs of mental illness, and he went as far as to prescribe an antipsychotic called trifluoride. Look, he was prescribed an antipsychotic. Let me try this one.
With a long ass name that begins with a T and ends with
zine.
Yes.
Trifluoperazine.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, okay. So from here, in October of 1962, he's sent to a military hospital in Philadelphia. And this is where they diagnosed him with schizoid personality disorder. Now, SPD, because I don't want to keep saying that, is characterized by a lack of interest in social relationships, a solitary lifestyle, secretiveness, emotional coldness, detachment, and general apathy. Affected individuals, all right, they may be unable to form intimate attachments to others. And simultaneously, they possess a rich and elaborate internal fantasy world. And I want you to put a pin in this, because we're going to come back to it later. Just pin. Now, this caused him, this diagnosis, to be honorably discharged. Not long after, somehow Gary manages to become a licensed practical nurse. He enrolls in the University of Pennsylvania. Fun fact for you, was founded by Ben Franklin in 1740. So this shit's old. Now, he found employment after that at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Coatesville. Here, he was terminated for shitty attendance, And apparently he was cruel to the patients. Like, he was really bad at taking care of them.
Well, you
And
gotta be cruel to be kind.
No, it's SPD, but I love that song. It's fun. So what's interesting about Gary is from August of 1962 until March 1987, he is in and out of menstrual. Yeah, he had menstruation. He was in and out of it for that time period. Actually, he was in and out of mental institutions as a patient. He had attempted suicide 13 times. 13. But apparently he came by this honestly. And by honestly, I mean that it seemed to be hereditary. His mother completed suicide after suffering an abusive relationship, which I can understand. When you're in an abusive relationship, sometimes it seems like it's your only way out. Like, I can relate. Suicide hotline, talk to us, all that jazz. Like, this is serious.
It's our pin tweet. If
Yeah.
you need help, pin tweet. Check it out. We have numbers.
Yeah, abusive relationship does not mean ending it, but this is what happened.
It means ending the relationship.
Oh, yeah, but not
like
your life.
100% end the relationship.
I don't know how bad the relationship would have to be for her to do what she did. In 1970, she ingested mercuric chloride. It is corrosive as shit, and it can lead to acute kidney failure or damage of the not testicles. And I'm drinking water. That is worse.
That's our problem here.
Yep. Gastrointestinal tract.
There you go.
If you drink enough of it, it's going to burn all the way down. Like, this is not good. That's how corrosive this is. And it can kill in as little as 24 hours in high doses. Also, Gary's brother Terry tried 3 times to commit suicide. So what do you do after you try to commit suicide?
I don't know.
Start a church.
That checks out.
Yeah, exactly. So the United Church of the Ministers of God, which was...
That's a long-ass name.
Yep. And apparently there's a very similar name to a legitimate church. So if you try to Google this, you're not going to get Gary's church, by the way. You're going to get a real church. But he establishes this church with his brother Terry in 1971. And they have like a whopping 5 followers. Gary decides that he is now a bishop. And this entire church was centralized around disadvantaged African Americans. Every Sunday, his followers would show up for service in Gary's home. It's not an actual church, it's his house.
That makes sense.
Right. And the neighbors reported that normally the people who were arriving for service were mentally ill in some capacity. And it was obvious just by how they approached the home, spoke, those kind of things. His church did grow in a way, because by 1975, he opened a bank account for the church at Merrill Lynch with an initial investment of $1,500. Then he took those funds to the stock market and grew the funds of the church to over $500,000, which is 1.2 mil in today's monies.
That's a lot of monies.
It was a lot of monies. And what was interesting is this church was thriving by 1986, even though he himself lived in squalor. Had a couple cars, but he basically treated his front yard like a dump.
You gotta love to be that neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta love zoning laws.
So much. So much.
I mean, zoning laws. I'm about zoning laws, but maybe that's me.
Speaking of laws.
Speaking of laws.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of laws?
Yeah, speaking of laws.
I guess there's laws coming up.
Yeah.
So In 1976, it's 1976. In 1976, Hendrik was charged
Heidnik.
with, yes, that's what I said.
Gary.
That's what I said.
Okay. You completely said that.
I definitely did. At some point in this podcast, I've said it. You'll notice I didn't say when I said it. I just said that I said it.
Okay.
Was charged with aggravated assault and carrying an unlicensed pistol after shooting the tenant of a house he had offered for rent, grazing the man in the face. Gary had a child named Maxine Davidson and was born to Anjanette Davidson. She was illiterate and mentally disabled with an IQ of only 48. So the baby was then placed into foster care. In 78, Heidnik signed out the sister of his then girlfriend, Anjanette, her sister being Alberta. Is that right?
Yep.
From a mental institution on day leave and proceeded to imprison her in a locked storage room in his basement for 10 days. After she was found in Gary's home, scared and covered in blood, she was returned to the hospital, where an examination revealed that she had been raped, sodomized, and that she had contracted gonorrhea. Heidnik was arrested and charged with kidnapping, rape, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. That's a lot.
Well, I mean, it was egregious what he did to that poor girl, Alberta.
Yes, see, but I'm always a fan of charging the most you can possibly charge, and then getting shit knocked off. A lot of times, sometimes they'll only charge, especially in this day and age, if you're white, they'll charge you with one crime to start with and then build. I'm always a fan of charging everything and then knocking things off.
Gary Heidnik was white, by the way.
I assumed. Because statistically, serial killers are.
Fair.
The original sentence was overturned on appeal, and Heidnik spent 3 years of his incarceration in mental institutions prior to being released in April of '83 under the supervision of a state-sanctioned mental health program. Gary used, is that matrimonial? Yes, it is. Gary used matrimonial services to meet his first wife by mail. He wrote to a Miss Betsy Distro in the Philippines for 2 years before proposing. She arrived in the States in '85, but the marriage was short-lived. Gary did manage to get her pregnant with his first son, Jesse John Distro.
Yeah, that was an interesting scenario that happens, because this poor woman from the Philippines comes over, marries Gary after he, not knowing any of his past record with falsely imprisoning and sodomizing a mental institution patient. So she did not know what she was signing up for. The marriage was over for several reasons. Number one, she walked into Gary fucking 3 other women at the same time. That's what he walked into. Just Gary fucking 3 women. Awesome. And Betty also stated that Gary forced her to watch him fuck other women, which is gross by any stretch of the imagination. After Betty left him in 1986, Heidnik was arrested yet again and charged with assault, indecent assault, spousal rape, and involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. So for poor Betty, the only way for her to move get out of the situation was to move back to the Philippines, and she moved back while she was still pregnant. So Gary did not get his hands on the baby, which is great. What's interesting here is that Gary is developing a taste for women he can control. So he decides that he needs to go back to being with mentally deficient women to reduce the risk of being caught. And he's also developing this like superiority complex because he wanted the opportunity to be like the boss or maybe even a god. And so this is where shit really hits the fan. Gary meets a 25-year-old woman named Josefina Riviera on November 25th, 1986. Now, she is standing at the corner of 2nd and Garand. She is a local prostitute, and she is working to unfortunately feed a drug addiction. She recounts it being cold with a light rain outside, and he pulled up and solicited her for sex. So she enters his car and then goes home with him willingly. Now, what's interesting is she says this, she never would go to a John's house. And this is the first time she made an exception to go back to his house. So they wind up engaging in happy adult fun time, consensually, and she begins to get dressed. Now, Gary suddenly grabs her from behind and chokes her unconscious. Then he dragged her down to his basement at his house at 3520 North Marshall Street in North Philadelphia, where he handcuffed her arms together. And then he placed muscle clamps on her legs with a long chain, and he sealed the nuts to the bolts with crazy glue. Now, she says he kept saying, "Shut up, keep still, I'm not going to hurt you." And he was drying the glue with a hairdryer to try to get it to dry faster. Josefina, of course, was screaming bloody murder. And what Gary had attempted to do was to place her into a pit that he had dug into the basement floor. It was pretty damn shallow because he was trying to seal her into the hole with wooden boards, and they were being slammed down repetitively on the top of her head, just trying to get her to fit. Now, she says she has asthma, so the tight space of this hole just made her scream more. So what Gary decides to do was to pull her back out by the hair and beat her viciously with a stick until she quieted down so he could get her back into the hole. At this point, he places sandbags on top of the boards to weigh them down. It's indeterminate how long she was initially in the hole, but Josefina was taken out of the pit and permitted to walk around the basement, but she was limited by the length of chain that was attached to her feet. Gary decides this is a good time to peace out and leave, and she heard the car drive away. And this is when she's looking around the basement. She's trying to figure out how the fuck am I going to get out of this basement, because this is pretty surreal. And she noticed a place on the wall that had been nailed shut. She yanked real hard on it, and it popped open. And it was a small enough space that she could crawl out and see just enough of the outside. So she starts screaming at the top of her lungs in Spanish and English, anything she could do to get help. Now, I get the most terrifying thing is you can taste freedom, you're screaming, and then she feels a strong pull on the chain from the inside. It's Gary. So he wrangles her back in the house. He adjusts the chains, adds more super glue, and then forces her back into the ground. She cannot say for sure how long she was in there, but she could hear the radio, and it was telling like certain times of the day. What the timeline suggests is 3 days later, the entire time she's in the hole, Gary returns with a new 24-year-old victim named Sandra Lindsay. Now, Josephina noticed that she was there because she heard another woman crying. And Gary is talking to her like, come on, Sandy, why are you crying? You've known me for years. Stop crying. Now, Sandra was added to the same hole, and they are both trapped in that pit together at that point. So they begin to talk to one another, and Josephina noted that Sandra was a little bit, she called her mentally deficient, basically. But Sandra had explained that she was on a walk to go to the corner store when Gary had pulled up and offered her a ride. Now, he was someone she was acquainted with for 4 years. They knew each other from the Elwyn Institute for Mentally Challenged People, and she had attended his church in his house. She was knocked out, and when she woke up, she was in the house. Sandra also was shackled with the super glue on the bolts in the same way. What's super fucked up is Sandra's mother and sister had gone to Gary's home looking for Sandy. And Gary answers the door and like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And all his mother could report hearing was this rock music fucking blaring. Now, she called the police, but the police couldn't enter the premise because Sandra was of age. And what was explained to me is that there was even if there was a possibility that she was there voluntarily despite having mental handicaps, the police would have had to known a crime was committed before they were allowed to enter the dwelling.
That doesn't sound right.
It's true, though. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. So she was technically of age, and the law recognized her as an adult. So they threw out the fact that she was mentally deficient. It didn't matter because she was a functioning adult. So unless she, her mother goes, oh, I know there's stolen drugs in the house. Go look for that. Like, the police need to know that there's a reason to enter. It's all that legal bullshit. I hate it. What was suspicious is that within days, Sandra's mother got a card in the mail with her handwriting, and it said, "Dear Mom, don't worry about me." And it was signed by her, and her fingerprints were all over it. Gary probably orchestrated this because that made her no longer a missing persons, and the police couldn't pursue it anymore. Down in that basement, Sandra and Josephina were slowly being tortured. So they were made to watch in turn as each one would be raped. And what was even more psychologically damning is they're alone in this basement for about a month. And then Gary starts digging the pit bigger. So you can only extrapolate what you have just gone through, and you don't know if he's digging a grave or what the fuck he's doing, but that hole is getting bigger. And that is the end of part 1. That is what we have time for on this episode.
Fun.
So, your thoughts? It's rough.
It is rough. Yes.
Are you gonna be able to handle another episode of this?
Well, I don't really have a choice, do I? I signed up for this ride.
Yes, we had not done a true crime case in a while. So this is the one that fell across my lap. So here we are. To lighten the mood, possibly, do you have a weird but true?
I do. And I'm going to tell you about James Honest Dick Tate, a state treasurer who, although he had a good reputation and rapport with his colleagues, one day disappeared with approximately $7 million worth of state funds.
Lovely.
After sending a few letters to his family, he was never heard from again. There you go.
So you can steal $7 million and disappear.
Apparently. All right, I need to pick a number.
You do. We're at the non-offensive dare that people need to start doing.
Let's see here. Let's pick a number. I'm going to go with 58.
We did that one. It's the first one you've ever picked that we've already done.
That was bound to happen sooner or later.
I know. You're so good at picking numbers, though.
Go 74. We already did that one.
We did not.
Ooh.
All right. This is an easy one. All right, you guys. I believe in the Macabre Academy. We can complete these dares. Okay. This is it. You ready? It is time to order something new off of a menu of your favorite restaurant.
There you go. Support local restaurants. Do takeout or delivery.
But the goal is to try something new from said place.
I'm going to be a hypocrite here because I do not do this, but try to order directly from the restaurant. They make about 30% more.
Perfect. All right. So when I wrote this, I didn't realize about quarantine. So this is actually really helpful. Non-offensive dare. It's spreading joy to local businesses, and you get to try something new.
There you go.
Yeah. So do that. Quit eating the same chicken fingers every time. Come on, guys. You're better than that.
Am I though?
Yes.
I don't know.
You cannot eat like a 6-year-old child every day of your goddamn life. Try something new.
I've literally ordered the same thing for whatever restaurant we go to. Like, I find one thing and I just stick with it.
No. Okay. So sometimes me and Brandy, we used to complete the dares to go along with the academy. I think it is your turn to complete a non-offensive dare.
Next time I order out, I will probably not do this.
No, do it. Try something new and tweet the new food out. Please. I'm begging you, Kev. Participate.
I will try my best.
If you don't do it, what's the incentive for the Macabre Academy to do it?
I like what I like.
So try something new.
But I might not like it.
But that's okay.
No, it's not.
It is fine.
All right. I will try my best.
Perfect.
All
okay,
right,
guys.
let's wrap up part 1, and then I'll see you in 20 minutes for part 2.
You got it.
All right.
Bye, guys. Have a good week.
Bye.
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 Wait, I lost the button again. We're back.
For you, it's been a week. For us, it's been about 20 minutes.
Yep. This is how we roll at the Macabre Academy.
It is now after midnight, so this is now not only a 2-dayer, but a 2-parter, but a 2-dayer.
That's fair. I didn't even think of that. Oh boy. All right, we got some fun banter, or are we diving right into the case?
It's already getting late. Let's get the hell out of here.
All right, so what happened last episode, Kev? What do you remember?
A lot of fucked up stuff.
You want to attempt to? No, all right.
No, go back and listen to part 1.
All right, so just a reminder, we got Gary Heidnik, who has a history of mental illness and rape and liking women with lower IQs. He's got a God complex. We got SBD rolling around here and all that fun stuff. So after he tries to kill himself, he decides to start a church. And as he's starting a church, we start picking up women off of a street corner and throw them in a basement after raping them and, chaining them and securing it with super glue. So we're kind of in his basement at the moment. And he's got a woman named Josephina who's 25, and another 24-year-old woman, Sandra, in one pit in his basement. And this is what they based Buffalo Bill off of from Silence of the Lambs. Now, he's already started to mentally torture them by digging a bigger pit. And I believe Kevin knows why the pit is now getting bigger.
I guess I might if I opened up my notes app instead of reading about the upcoming COVID assistance program, which is looking pretty good, actually. If I may take a sidetrack here.
Sure.
It looks like Biden is suggesting a $1,400 stimulus check in addition to the $600 that we already got.
Yes, please.
He's also going to add $400 a week to unemployment.
Also nice.
Yeah, not bad at all. And apparently there's also going to be it's 1.9 trillion that aims to speed up distribution of the vaccine.
Even better.
You know what? I'm about it. Sorry,
Good.
Got distracted.
It's okay. It was a pleasant distraction because we're about to dive into more fuckery.
That's yeah. I'll take an extra $400 a week on my unemployment.
Wait, you're getting unemployment because you couldn't go back to work?
Not at the moment, but I was. I got to reapply.
There you go. Are you going to be able to get back to work when this is all said and done? I don't know if because you work in a peculiar industry.
I was told yes, but I haven't spoken to my boss in 9 months.
Why not just touch base?
I try. He doesn't respond.
Well, I'm not surprised because I know who your boss is.
Yeah, I'm kind of... I don't know. I also don't know where to go from here. But anyway, where we should be going from here, because it's already late as hell and I want to go see my wife at some point tonight, is we should be talking about young Lisa Thomas. Lisa Thomas, who was 19 at the time, was kidnapped on December 23rd, 1986. So Merry Christmas Eve.
3 days before I was born, literally.
You're just bad luck for everybody.
Right?
She was added to the basement in the same manner as the other two women. He lured them into the house with consensual sex in exchange for payment. He would then abruptly lock them into a chokehold from behind, render them unconscious, where they would then be brought to the basement, stripped, shackled, and as always, he superglued the locks closed and then crammed them into a shallow pit in the basement, which was sealed with sandbags on top of the boards, which is a new one. He didn't do that before. He's getting better. He hasn't made the pit much bigger, though, because he's lazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty shallow hole. It takes a lot of effort to go deep.
Hey, there's a lot to be said for laziness. Not in this case, but in general.
I'm sure.
Hey, being lazy has saved me a lot of money over the years.
Oh, God, I wish I could be lazy right now. So much work. So much
On
work.
January 1st or 2nd, 1987, Deborah was brought into the basement. She was not docile and would spit and fight Gary frequently. She was not about to lose her personal dignity or respect, and for this, she paid dearly.
Deborah, I forgot to put her last name in the notes. I feel so bad. Deborah.
Yes.
What was her last name?
You Google, I'll read.
Okay.
So Gary had a system of bringing women into the house. At this point, if they complied, they would be allowed out of the pit and given a rubber mattress. The next day, if they were still, quote unquote, good,
Dudley.
I'm sorry?
It was Deborah Dudley was her
There
name.
you go.
Yeah. I'm so sorry I forgot that. It's not respectful to her that I forgot her last name. I'm so sorry.
We've now fixed that problem, so we're fine.
Okay.
As I was saying, if they were still quote unquote good the next day, he would let them sleep on a regular mattress. He would bring them better food, and if they misbehaved, they were taken back to the pit, and this went on for as long as Gary deemed necessary. Gary was also unpredictable. He would fly into a rage, and it meant the women were continually raped, beaten, and tortured. There were powerful rewards as well as punishments to get the women to want to do what they were told. It also pitted them against each other, having one of their own aid in the punishment if they acted up. If you don't beat her and beat her hard, then it's going to be you. This was a quote by Josephina about what had happened to her. On 18 January 87, Heidnik abducted Jacqueline Askins.
Yeah. She, at the time, was the youngest of the 6 victims. She was about 18 years old at the time that she was abducted. She was also a prostitute, and he had not only solicited her services, but his ploy to get her to come home was, I'm sorry, but it was mind-blowing. He convinced her to go to the house because he had an ice cream cake in the back seat of his car that he needed to put in the freezer. So once they entered the residence, Gary and Jackie wound up playing arcade games for a little while. He apparently just had them lying around his house or some shit. But next thing she knew, Jackie was in a headlock. Now, she remembers being led down the stairs of the basement in chains. And that horror that hit her when they came to the bottom of the stairs and turned were that there were 4 dirty and battered women in chains having a birthday party for Josephina. Because she was the new woman, she didn't get to engage in the party. She was stripped and jammed into the hole, and she called it your personal grave. She's the 5th woman in the basement at this point. During a TV interview, which occurred on May 5th, 2018, so the interview was a special report called Gary Heidnik's House of Horrors 30 Years Later. And Jackie stated that Heidnik had wrapped duct tapes around their mouths and then stabbed them in the ears with a screwdriver, especially her. The idea was Gary didn't want them to get rowdy and escape because he could realize that the women could hear him coming and going. He also insulated the outside world from hearing the women by placing sandbags over the windows. And as we remember in part 1, he would blast rock music constantly to cover their screams. So one day during this ordeal, Sandra somehow disobeyed Gary. The women were a little ambiguous as to what, but he boarded her back into one of the pits. When Sandy attempted to crawl out, he wound up chaining her up by the wrists to an overhead beam with handcuffs, and he left her there for like a week. Okay? And during the time of that week, he would beat her with a stick. The other women were also restrained to the point where they could not reach her to help her. So he finally tried to bring her down to alleviate the punishment and force feed her bread. But when he undid the wrist handcuffs, her body just fell on the floor. Apparently, she had died of a combination of the starvation, the torture, and an untreated fever. Another source said that she had died from the weight of her body on her lungs, so she was essentially crucified. Now, this is where it gets extra rough. Heidnik is in a scramble. Okay, he has to do something with this body, and Sandra can be tied back to him. So he decides it's a good idea to dismember her. And then he also solicits the help of his other captives. He somehow like magically convinced them, I don't want to say magically, it's just with all the torture and stuff going on, he convinced them that if the cops found her corpse, right, all the women would be in trouble for being accomplices. So he had each woman make sure that they made a cut into Sandy's body. So all the women were assigned an appendage to remove, and Gary took off the head. What sucks even worse is he had problems dealing with the arms and the legs once they were moved. So he put them in the freezer and marked them as dog food. He then placed the ribs on a tray and put them in the oven, and then proceeded to boil the head on a pot on the stove. What is mind-blowing to me is that a police officer came to the house because the neighbors were complaining about the smell. He tried to knock on the front door, but there was no answer. So he went around back of the house and was peeking through the windows trying to see what was going on. And he saw the pot on the stove. So he walks back around to the front of the house. And before he can knock on it again, the door pops open. There's Gary already trying to explain what's happening. He's like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm cooking a roast. I fell asleep and I burned it. This officer's like, okay, this is plausible. All right, everybody burns their dinner now and again. And then he leaves. Now, what hurts my brain, okay, what is literally a mind fuck for me is the stench of a human body being cooked or burned or rotting is very distinct. I don't know if this cop was a rookie and had never smelled a dead body before or something, but I don't know how you don't know that there's something wrong. Like a burnt roast wouldn't smell like that.
I got nothing.
Yeah. Anthony Sowell was my first case on this podcast. And this happened with Anthony Sowell. The entire community could not figure out the stench. And police officers were deployed to his house, couldn't fucking figure it out. I think we should know by now that if you smell something that bad, it's not a fucking roast. Okay. So, according to eyewitness testimony and several other sources, Gary ground up the meat or flesh from Sandy and mixed it with dog food to feed to his other captors. Josephina confirmed this. Other victims confirmed this. I watched the tapes of the interviews. And what sucks is he had already been feeding them regular dog food sandwiches because Jackie had been watching TV and remarked on a commercial where they were showing all the ingredients for this dog food. And she said that those meat and potatoes looked just like super delicious because all she had at that point was bread and water. So Gary's like, okay, well then if that looks that good, you guys can eat dog food then. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His defense attorney said that upon examination of a Cuisinart and other tools in his kitchen, that no evidence was found of this. The attorney went on to say that they had made up the story to support his defense of insanity. The DA said that he started the rumor of cannibalism in public, and the fact that there was no evidence of anyone eating human flesh.
Don't you love defense attorneys?
Yeah.
So good.
Speaking of defense attorneys, Trump has decided not to pay his.
What's his name? Giuliani?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he pay his lawyer? He's going to need him when he's out of office.
Well, actually, he needs him now because there's nobody to defend him for the impeachment trial.
Wonderful. So how does he think that this is going to happen if he doesn't pay him?
Because Trump has a history of not paying people.
Lovely. Why am I not surprised?
Right?
I mean, color me shocked. Shocked.
And Giuliani was billing $20,000 a day.
So he owes him like $1 billion at this point?
Quite a lot, yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And apparently Trump's also ducking his calls.
Wait, where did you see this?
The internets.
You got to put the article in the...
I'll have to find it.
Please find it. Put it in the Discord. Speaking of which, guys, live chat for Macabre Academy. Discord. Free. Super
Dank
free.
memes.
Dank memes.
Dank. The dankest. The dankest.
Shatter puts some of the best memes up. He's so good at finding stuff for me.
I said, the dankest.
Oh
the
my
memes
God.
are good, people. The memes
Well,
are good.
There's another kind of dank, like a dark, dank basement.
Oh, I see what you did there. I love a good segue.
I'm getting good at him again.
You really are.
I'm trying. So in this dark, dank basement of Gary Heidnik's house, we have Deborah. Okay.
We sure do.
Deborah Dudley. And she is continually being rebellious and giving Gary Heidnik some hell. Okay, drove him nuts.
Giving him the business.
Yep. So Gary devises a new torture to try to get these girls like reined in. Okay, I saw an interview where he was explaining this, and it is so cold. And the annoyance in his voice just sent chills up my spine. But he devises, all right, let's use electric shock. So he forces Lisa, Deborah, and Jackie bound in chains back into the pit. Josephina was giving some testimony on this, and she says it possibly occurred on March 1st of 1987. Yes. Heidnik had added about an inch or two of water to the hole. And then he had forced Josephina specifically to help apply electrical current from stripped extension cords to the woman's chains. Okay. So, of course, this was uncomfortable. This was awful. And as a result of the electrocution, Deborah fell face first into the water. Now, Jackie was still conscious, and she started to scream that she thought Debbie was dead. So Gary picks up Debbie's head by the hair, lifts it up, examines her, and goes, now my troubles are over. I can go back to having a peaceful basement. Completely fine with the fact that she was dead. Problem solved. So Josephina was first in the basement. So he's had the longest time to work on her. Okay. So there's like a chain of command. The order in which you entered the basement was like you were in charge of the other women, basically. So he forced Josephina to write a letter admitting that he and her had killed Deborah by electrocution in the basement. And they both signed it. And this was purely a control mechanism, right? He tells her, if you turn me in, then you're going to be turning yourself in. He removed Josephina's chains at this point, and the pair disposed of the body in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, since he already determined that cutting up the body was too difficult. And this was March 22nd of 1987. Now, if Josephina had escaped while she was out of her chains at this time, she knew that Gary would turn around and kill all the women to cover his tracks. And this was a risk she was not going to take. Okay. The day, my notes got a little backwards. So, okay. They go out the next day and they find a new prostitute, and he has Josephina help lure the prostitute in. Her name is Agnes. She recognizes Josephina in the car and willingly gets in because she had also been solicited by Gary previously. Okay. So she is brought there and put in the hole. Now, at this point, Josephina convinces Gary to let her go temporarily to go visit her family. Okay. Why are my notes that far out of order? I'm going to find what I want to say. It is not where I want it to be. All right, I need elevator music for a minute, please, Soundmaiden. Part of my notes are missing, Kev.
Which part?
They're just completely gone.
Which part?
Where Agnes was captured and then why Josephina was so smart. Just
Sherlock knocked it
gone.
off.
Huh?
Oh, Sherlock was climbing the chair. I told him to knock it off. Like, which part are you, like, the risk it wasn't going to take?
And there,
home.
That's where I'm missing notes. There's
okay, well,
I have 4 bullets missing.
I think I have them.
It says that Josephina was smart. And she was getting Gary to trust her.
I have going to see the family, needed to tell them goodbye. She was going to stay with Gary forever. Do you have all that?
Yeah, I think I remember what's missing, but it's not
I have
here.
it. I can just read it.
No. I have that. There's
okay.
Bullet points missing. Okay, I'm going to just go off of memory.
And we're back.
Thank you, Soundmaiden. Love my elevator music. Okay. So let me explain Josephina a little bit better because I lost my notes and this is really important. Josephina figured out Gary Heidnik. Okay. Now, she was there the longest, and she looks like an accomplice at this point. But in reality, okay, when you're in an extreme situation like this, she realizes that crying and screaming and fighting isn't going to get her anywhere. So if she can convince Gary to trust her and that she is drinking his Kool-Aid, then she might have a chance to escape. And she just doesn't want to escape for her. She wants to get everybody out of there. So every chance she gets, she tells Gary, hey, I understand. I'm here for you. She realizes that this entire fucked up thing that's going on right now is because Gary has like family issues. Okay. Because at one point, Gary Heidnik tells all the women in the basement that his goal was to get 10 women down there so that he can get them all pregnant and basically have a baby farm down in his basement. And then his family can't get taken away from him the way that the other children he birthed were, because they were all put into foster care. So he has created this elaborate fantasy world of a baby farm in his basement. And she goes, okay, all right, I get it. You're lonely. You know, I'm here for you, whatever you want. So Gary learns to trust her to the point where she's allowed into the house. He brings her like hot chocolate, hot dogs, rewards, right, for doing whatever he tells her to do. And she's even allowed upstairs to watch movies with Gary. But every night he brings her back down, puts her in the shackles. Okay. So she figures all this shit out. She's so fucking smart. So she's like, I am going to use this against Gary Heidnik and get all of us out of there. So she says, hey, look, take me to go see my family. Okay. I need to tell them goodbye because I'm going to stay with you forever. And I'm going to help you make all these children. And basically she placates his ego and is like, I'm going to give you whatever you want. But he's like, oh, okay, well, if you help me with this, since I trust you, we'll let you say goodbye to your family. Okay. And she's so smart. She manipulates the manipulator. She says, look, you cannot pull up in front of my house because then my family members may be able to ID you or they'll recognize the car. So Gary's like, look, you got 15 minutes. And if you don't come back, bad shit is going to happen. And in his mind, there's no way that Josephina would defy him. He thinks he has her that far conditioned. This God complex that he has is going to be his downfall. And there's like some theories that he just wanted to get caught. That's why he took Josephina to see her family. That is not the fucking case. She got back at him. So he drives her to the gas station and said that he would wait for her there. So this badass bitch gets out of the fucking car and calmly walks away from him as she can, right? Until she is out of his visual view, right? He can't see her. And that is when she goes to the closest payphone and she fucking calls 911. She explains that she was kidnapped, beaten, raped, and tortured over 4 months. And she starts hysterically trying to tell the police to go to Gary's house and that there are other women being held captive there. And if they don't go right now and get Gary right now, he will go kill them immediately. She even tells the officers where Sandra's remains are and the location of Deborah's body. Now, the responding officers decide to believe her because they can see the chafing and the bruising from the chains on her arms and her legs. So, like, there has to be something to this. The officers go to the gas station, locate the car, and instruct Heidnik to turn it off. Now, Gary gets out of the vehicle, puts both hands above his head, and he's like, what is this all about? My child support? And the officer goes, no, it's a little more serious than that, and arrests Gary on March 24th, 1987. Now, they're trying to also get Josephina to calm down, but she was very, very adamant. Get to the house now. Go get the other girls. What are you doing? What are you waiting for? Go. There's other girls. So she kept repeating this. She was hysterical. Policemen head to Gary's basement, and there is a lot of stories from the responding officers that were really emotional. And they said that it just didn't seem real when they came down those stairs. And when they entered the premises, they smelled the death. They recognized the smell. And all of the TVs and the radio were up full volume, and it was absolutely deafening. They can only go down the stairs by flashlight. And when they get to the bottom of the stairs, somebody like flicks the light on. And they say 2 women shackled on a mattress, bloody, beaten, and in horrific conditions. Now, Jackie is the first one to realize, because they don't react right away, that this was the authorities. She went bounding to her feet and started shaking Lisa awake because she was asleep on the mattress. And they all start crying and hugging each other. We're saved, we're saved, we're saved. And when they calmed down a little bit, they also pointed to the pit and they kept saying, she's in there, she's in there, she's in there. The officers pulled the sandbags off the planks of wood and free Agnes at this point. None of them had ever seen anything like this, and they hope to never again see something like this.
So apparently there was a best friend also involved with this.
Mm-hmm.
Cyril, also known as Tony Brown, was arrested in conjunction with Heidnik. Brown was later released on $50,000 bail and the agreement that he would fully testify against Heidnik. In part, Brown admitted to witnessing Lindsay's death in the basement and Heidnik dismembering her.
Lindsay's the last name of one of the victims. I'm so sorry I didn't correct it. That would be Sandy's death. He saw Sandra Lindsay.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
However, it would ultimately be Josephina's testimony that would put him away for good. She has been the most vocal out of all the women and has written a book on her ordeal. Do we have the name of that book?
Oh, I forgot to put it in there. Hold on.
Shortly after his arrest in April of '87, Heidnik attempted to hang himself in his jail cell. At his arraignment, he claimed that the women were already in the house when he moved in.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
You know, some people leave a pool table, other people leave a bunch of women. You know, it happens. It's a thing. It just, you know, you forget. You're moving out in a hurry. You don't want to move the pool table. You just leave it there for the next people to deal with.
Oh, Cellar Girls, the name of the book Josephina wrote.
There you go.
Cellar Girl. It is available on Amazon. It is on my wish list.
You can also buy it from a local independent bookstore probably and try to save some local businesses. I love Amazon, but we're trying here.
That's why it's on my wish list.
Book Depository out of the UK, also a great place to shop.
There you go.
Their shipping times are horrendous, though. Just put that out there. So at this point, after he said that the women were already there when he moved in, at trial, Heidnik was defended by a Charles Peruto Jr., anyway, who attempted to prove that Heidnik was legally insane. Heidnik's insanity was successfully refuted by the prosecution, led by Charles F. Gallagher III. Oh, we got a junior and a third in one trial? That's impressive.
It's a good one.
I like it already. That's a great trial. Let's see here. The fact that he had amassed approximately $550,000 in his in his brokerage accounts was used to argue that he was not insane. Testimony from his Merrill Lynch financial advisor, Robert Kirkpatrick, was also used to prove competency. Kirkpatrick called Heidnik an astute investor who knew exactly what he was doing. Convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder on 1 July 88, Heidnik was sentenced to death and incarcerated in the State Correctional Institute in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So a year, not even a year, like 6 months later, in January of 1989, he attempts suicide by overdose on his Thorazine. So that didn't work out too well for him. In 1997, Heidnik's daughter, Maxine, from his first wife, Betty, filed a suit in federal court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania seeking a stay of execution on the basis that Heidnik was not, in fact, competent to be executed. Now, this woman was forced to watch him have sex with other women. She helped get him convicted of spousal rape, and now she's helping file a stay of, or his daughter, the ex-wife and the daughter from the situation are filing stays of execution. Sure, why not? After 2 years of legal proceedings in various courts, okay, so we're talking about July 3rd, 1999, the U.S. District Court of Eastern District of Pennsylvania issued the final ruling that cleared the way for Heidnik's execution. Now, Heidnik was executed by lethal injection July 6, 1999. This was at the State Correctional Institution, Rockview, in Center County, Pennsylvania. He is also cremated. Okay, so the body does not exist anymore. And as of 2020, he is the last person to be executed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He remains the third of only 3 people to be executed in Pennsylvania since the resumption of the death penalty. Kev, what are your thoughts on the death penalty? I'm just curious. I've never asked you, and this is one of the first gruesome cases we've done in a hot minute.
Well, the thoughts on the death penalty kind of spiral into a larger discussion on the judicial system and testimonies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's not a discussion you're willing to...
No, it is. I'm just trying to work through it in my head.
Oh, that's fair.
I worked through it a little earlier with the wife, and then it's been so long that I've now forgotten what our discussion was. Clearly, there's problems with our judicial system. I think everybody can pretty much agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts are... This is actually extremely topical in more ways than one. That the federal government of the United States just executed a woman for murdering the man, I believe it was a man, who kidnapped and raped her for years. And the United States government just put her to death, I think, yesterday or today.
Wait.
We are recording this on 15 January 2021.
I didn't even know this.
Yeah, it just happened. My wife's been all over it. So I don't remember. I unfortunately don't remember her name. I can probably find it on my wife's Twitter account real quick. But I mean, that's some bullshit. Like, that's...
I mean, that's very upsetting to me.
It really is. And we could definitely use some elevator music here while I go through these tweets. Do, 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 do. No, I can't find it right now. Oh, here it is. The case is of one Lisa Montgomery.
Can
She's
you retweet it?
I will figure out. I will find it and do all of that. Yes, but I mean, executions like that are fucking bullshit. Like, first of all, that woman shouldn't have been convicted of fucking anything. But that's...
usually they get, like, I don't know, maybe I watch too much at SVU, but they wouldn't a district attorney would not prosecute cases like that in
well,
self-defense.
They did, and then they killed this woman. So our judicial system is very, very fucked up in this country, as I'm sure most of our listeners know. I don't know what our demographics are, but I'm going to assume we have a lot of American listeners.
Mm-hmm.
This justice system is racist. There's problems with that we've talked about here on this podcast with testimony, eyewitness testimony, all those kind of things. See our last episode on the Mandela effect for more on that. My wife is of the opinion that prisons shouldn't even exist, and I think that might be a bridge too far for me, but she's fully in that camp. I am not there. Then there's the problems that we've already talked about. There are some things that happen, this case in particular as an example, of behavior that is so far removed from the societal norms that, in my opinion, you forfeit your rights as a citizen of the world.
Mm-hmm.
In order for societies to function, we all agree to live by a certain set of rules. And, okay, you sell some drugs to help your family, whatever, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit. You run a giant drug distribution ring where you're killing off competitors, I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
You should be punished for the lives that you've taken. Should you be executed for them? Maybe. Depends on how if you just shoot them, okay, that's one thing. That's business. And you deserve to be punished for that in some way. You probably deserve to be locked in prison for the rest of your natural life. Assuming that the trial is fair and equal and the proof is there that you've done what they've said you've done. You rob a bodega, you should be punished for that in some way, shape, or form. You should be forced to make restitution. Maybe you should be in jail. I don't have the answers here. And I'm not saying I do. But there are things that are so egregious where you have gone so far beyond what a normal person would ever consider doing that you have forfeited your rights as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming that there are no problems with your trial, assuming that you have done what has been said that you've done, in this case in particular, once convicted, I don't think you should go to jail. I think we should shoot you in the fucking courthouse.
This is one of those cases I would 100% agree. There's not even circumstantial evidence here. Like, it is all...
If you have reached the point in your thinking as a human being where you can somehow justify this level of brutality and depravity,
mm-hmm.
you don't deserve to live anymore. you have forfeited completely the right to exist.
Fair. Completely fair.
People are fond of saying all life has meaning. No, it doesn't. Hitler, Stalin, Pot, Mao, this motherfucker. Your life doesn't have value.
You want to add another layer of fucked up to this case. There's 2 more layers of fucked up. Okay. This is taboos that I think are fucked up. Gary's house, right? That 3520 North Marshall Street in North Philadelphia. Okay. It's possibly one of Philly's 13th most likely sites for haunting. What sucks is they sealed off the basement with concrete, and then they remodeled the house into apartments.
Of course they did.
There's a chance that those people living in that house don't even fucking know what happened in that basement. That 2 women died and 1 was cannibalized.
Oof.
Right? It hurts the brain. Okay. Now I got to do one of these last minute, I got to explain something to explain something. And then this is going to wrap up everything with a bow, I hope. Okay. I was reading an article on thewitonline.com, which I felt was relevant. So again, this is me explaining something, explain something. Okay. So do you know who Medusa is?
Yes.
Okay. Who is she?
You mean the mythical creature with the snakes for hair?
Yes. So her original origin story said that she was born a Gorgon. And a Gorgon is that what you just described. Hideous, venomous snakes for hair on this woman. And all those who beheld her would turn to stone. And the Gorgon actually is a name derived from ancient Greek, meaning dim, grim, or dreadful. Okay. What happens is there's actually another backstory for Medusa. Please hang in there with me. I swear it's going to make sense. See, we have to look at Metamorphosis, which is written by Ovid. Okay. About 1000 AD. 180, I don't know, early on. So he writes that she was gorgeous, highly attractive woman, and Medusa had caught the eye of Poseidon. And as he coveted her, right, he couldn't have her because she had taken a vow of chastity and to honor her goddess Athena, who is a virgin goddess. So as we know, consent is not a thing amongst ancient Greek gods. And Poseidon viciously attacks and rapes Medusa inside of this sacred temple of Athena. Now, Athena gets pissed, blames Medusa, the victim, and punishes her with a mug so ugly that it would turn those people to stone. In the article I'm going to quote for a minute, it says, it's a tragedy not to mention that Ovid writes that the punishment was well earned by Medusa. Because if a woman was raped, the first question is, what is she doing to put herself in danger? I could almost see Athena's process. What is Medusa wearing? What does Medusa look like? Why is she alone in that temple? Of course, she deserves to be punished. End quote. The version of this myth collides with all versions of it, where Perseus decapitates her, claims the head as a prize to weaponize her. This woman was violated, punished by the goddess or the woman who had the power to help her. She is demonized, stripped of her identity, not only by her attacker, but by bystanders, to be violently murdered. And this story is hard to process But this is kind of what happened to Josephina. Okay. There was so much victim shaming for her after this case broke. Okay. They're like, oh, she was an accomplice. She knew what she was doing. They completely rejected the fact that she was a victim. She was trying to survive, and she was trying to save the girls in the basement. Okay. There is a video from the 80s that I watched on YouTube that said victim or accomplice, ? I almost threw up. Literally
that
almost.
That could just be clickbaiting.
No. This is the original footage.
Oh, okay.
From her recorded interview from the 80s. There are several video clips that were legitimately from the time that asked the question, was she an accomplice? Publicly. And they're like, the mentality is like, okay, she was asking for it because she was a prostitute. Was she stupid for putting herself at risk? Was she a monster because she helped Gary? And did it matter that her captor had abused and tortured her to the point of stripping her of her identity? And I saw this with Anthony Sobel too, because the girls were crack addicted that he managed to murder and viciously rape. Okay. And I just have to say it, and then I'm done. The real monsters are the rapists, like Poseidon, the abusers, like Perseus, okay, and the victim shamers, like Thena and Ovid. Murder and rapists, like Anthony Sowell and Gary Heidnik, are the monsters. And I don't understand how people cannot actively choose to look further into a victim's story. The only time she finally got recognized for being a badass is shortly after she got her book out. And she shouldn't have had to do that. I mean, yay for you making, money and making the best life possible for yourself and starting a family. You're a badass, and I respect the shit out of you. But it took a book to explain her side of the story. What? Why?
Because people are trash. And not in the fun brandy way of people are trash. People are actually trash.
How do you victim shame? Like, that happened to your lady. She was shamed and convicted of murder, which was clearly self-defense and a mental break caused by abuse of said person.
Well, let's end this tragedy train for the night, because it's now 1 a.m.
Yeah, you win.
And
okay,
you've worked all day, and I have nothing to do except go watch the Great British Baking Show. But that's neither here nor there.
I need Animal Crossing after this, so I'm with you. Why don't you give me Weird But True, please?
So I had one, and then I found a different one that's even better.
Okay, make it good. I really need a good one right now.
Have you heard of the Dakar Rally?
Dakar?
Dakar Rally, yes.
Not the car rally, Dakar.
Yes.
Never heard of it.
Okay. It's a rally primarily through the desert in Dakar, right? Mm-hmm. So it's multiple days, multiple stages. It's you and your co-driver in a car together. And this probably isn't your first time doing an event like this together, so you probably know each other pretty well. I just saw this on the Twitters that one of the drivers abandoned his co-driver in the middle of a stage and drove away.
Wait, what?
Yes. The tweet that I just read is, "There's mad," and then there's parting ways with your co-driver less than halfway through a Dakar rally stage mad.
Wow.
He pulled the car over, told him to get the fuck out, and drove the fuck away.
Oh my God.
I've never been that mad at anybody.
That could have been that had to be an expensive decision, right? Like you have to out entry fees and like.
I don't. I only read the headline.
Kev.
We're in the middle of a podcast. You want me to read the whole goddamn thing while we're in the middle of a podcast? I'm trying to be a professional here. While being on Twitter.
You're a professional. I wanted to say procrastinator, but it didn't come out right.
So yes, the guy got pissed off and dropped his co-driver off in the middle of a stage and just went bye and zipped away.
Great.
Hi, Sherlock.
Fun times. Okay.
So that is definitely weird but true.
Definitely weird but true. So we are at the very, very end, so you know what that means.
Yes, I have to find a number.
No, it means non-offensive dare time.
Yes, that's I have to find a number. I have to pick a number.
Okay.
Also, cat.
Cat.
See?
Hi, cat.
Cat. Look at him. Look how cute he is. Look how cute he is. Look how cute he is. Anyway, I don't know. Give me a range.
It's all over the board now. It's hit or miss.
Okay. Let's do 53.
Did it?
Did it? Damn it.
Yeah, it was Winchester. You weren't here for that.
26.
Did it?
Pick something around 26.
Okay, we're gonna close my eyes, spin my finger, and point. Okay. Dare number 38.
Close enough.
Replace something that was lost, forgotten, or broken.
Okay, there you go.
You can interpret that however you want. I'm just going to repeat it one more time. Your non-offensive dare this week is to replace something that was lost, forgotten, or broken. That's it. That's all I got for you. We're done. We're going to need to find something later next week. I don't know. I can handle I can't do serial killers back to back.
We'll figure something out.
All right. I'm going to go play Animal Crossing. Yins have a great week.
I'm going to go watch Great British Bake Off.
Yeah, let's do it. Bye, guys.
Bye.